Well, hey everyone, welcome back to Hello Church. I'm Justin Trapp.
I'm Wade Beard, and this is our first episode of 2021. I'm excited that we're going to start the year off strong.
Yeah, it feels like I haven't talked to you since last year.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Oh gosh,
How long did it take you to?
My wife was begging me
that one?
not to lead with that. She was like, "Please, spare everyone and don't lead with that."
It's great because we just did an episode where it was the best moments of 2020.
This will make the worst.
We've already started the process for 2020.
Yeah,
the worst
moments of Hello Church. The worst jokes.
Yeah, the worst jokes. But it is our first episode of 2021, and I think it's a great topic because we're talking about rest. Pastors, do you feel burnout? Do you feel tired? Do you feel like you're just making it by? If so, I think this is a perfect episode for you as you begin 2021.
Yeah, and really, when we talk about rest, right? When we're talking about getting away, replenishing your mind and your heart, we're really talking about being intentional, right? Mm-hmm. Because the world is, you have people around you and your kids' schedule, the school activities, like all these things. There's this like earth-sucking gravitational pull to push you off your to-do list, the things that you've got to get done today, the things that you need to accomplish this year. And if you aren't intentional about your life, your time, your focus, pastor, all of these things will sort of muddy the waters. They'll get in the way. Mm-hmm. They will cause you to be, less efficient. They'll cause you to be, tired a lot faster. And so really what we're talking about is being intentional. I love what John Maxwell said. And of course, there's literally like a John Maxwell quote for like everything in life, right? You could just Google like grace and John Maxwell or productivity and John, like he's literally got a little nugget on a calendar somewhere.
I also feel like when pastors need illustrations, they just Google John Maxwell quote and they just choose one.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah, especially leadership, right? But I love what John Maxwell says. He says that intentional living embraces only the things that add to the mission of significance. And pastors, we know that you're on a mission of significance. You're both personally, but also your church as an organization is on a mission of significance and wanting to reach your community. And so being intentional really only chooses to embrace the things that add to that mission of significance. So for you personally, what are the things that add to your mission, your personal mission, the values that you have, and what things can you embrace that add to the mission of your church? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Really, intentionality, but also how rest falls into that.
Yeah. Well, and it's a pretty well-recognized fact that if you want to achieve something great, it takes time. So if you want to lift 300 pounds, it takes time and it takes planning. And I think the same is true about rest. We don't really think about it that way. Has anybody ever not planned to rest and they just were like, man, this has just been such a restful week? I don't think that's ever happened. It always has to be planned. So if you want to be well rested, you're gonna have to plan it. And so we're gonna talk about that. And I think the first point, and Justin, I think you can speak to this really well, is trying to find a way to plan a sabbatical for however long it's going to be. But I think pastors, 2021, after the crazy year of 2020, might benefit from planning a sabbatical in advance this year.
Yeah, so when we're talking about rest, that there's long periods of rest and there's short periods of rest. There's weekly moments or windows, so to speak, that you've got to be intentional about that rest. Yeah. But what Wade mentioned is taking a prolonged period of rest, and maybe it sounds to you like a sabbatical, like that sounds. Some of you thought, man, that sounds amazing, and some of you thought I could never do that.
Yeah,
and I felt the same way. We were in a season at Ministry Pass and Seminary where it was a tough season. We were experiencing some growing pains. We'd just gotten into our first office. And, we've been programmed by John Maxwell again, right? Everything rises and falls on leadership. So in my mind, it's like, I've got to be there. I've got to be present. I've got to be helping the team. I can't be away for a prolonged period of time because it all rises and falls on leadership, on me being there. And, it was a tough season, I have to be honest. And I remember getting to the time when I was supposed to go on a sabbatical and thinking, this is the worst time to take a sabbatical.
Yeah.
And the saving grace, so to speak, of me being able to do that was the fact that I had planned ahead. And so I started in January, and I said in May, May is my wife and I's anniversary, so I chose May. I'm going to do a sabbatical. So I planned a trip at the beginning of sabbatical. I bought plane tickets, had car rentals, hotels, all of that. And so that was really the only reason why I didn't back out. Otherwise, I probably would have backed out.
You committed yourself.
Yeah,
you went all in.
And so here's what we did. We were in Houston. We flew to Vancouver, and then we rented a car, and we drove down the coast over like a 7-day period from Vancouver to San Francisco. And it was a wonderful time.
Yeah.
And that really allowed me to escape, right? To feel like it's not like a sabbatical shouldn't be one giant long staycation. You should get out, and then you come back. And of course, you're at home and you're able to rest. And of course, my wife had a ton of house things for me to do.
Of course, yeah.
But my mind wasn't heavy, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's good that you're talking about these rhythms and these periods of rest. And even when you look at Scripture, what's the one commandment that we don't talk about the most out of all the others? And that's the Sabbath. We have been given this cycle every single week where God commands us to find a way to rest. And when we rest, a lot of great things happen. We rest our body, we rest our minds, but we also remind ourselves that the world keeps moving without us, that God is still God, even if we're not working 24/7. So it's very powerful. And then you also see seasons of rest where the Israelites will rest the land, where slaves, servants will be freed. And so we see those rhythms, and I think that's important to understand the weekly rhythm, the monthly rhythm, the yearly rhythm, and then rhythms over the course of many years, like 7-10 years. That's so important, and I think it's important to be intentional about that, and then also find a way to take days off without warning. And I think that's a really good piece of advice. If you can find a way to do that, that would be fantastic, because here's what it does, is it allows you to build out your team to where things don't rise and fall on you every single day, to where you can step out and you can say, okay, I'm going to take a day off and things will not burn down. So if you can find a way to do that, you actually will prepare to take those days off suddenly before they even happen. And I think that's helpful as well.
Well, and here's another thing about planning a sabbatical ahead of time, right? So I planned it in January. We had 5 months to basically get everyone ready to work without me. And, I was worried about that. I was worried about going. It was a tough time, but I don't even remember this, but when I was gone, that was May, we had one of the most successful months in the history of the company while I was away. I think it was the second highest month we'd ever done in revenue while I was gone for 4 weeks. And what it taught me was, A, it's possible to take a sabbatical. B, the organization actually was made better by me getting away for a prolonged period of time, because it taught everyone to everyone had to step up, but it also taught me a lesson too, right? There's a lot of things that I was doing that I probably shouldn't be doing as far as day-to-day activities. My punch list of things to get done today, and it made me feel like I was, got a lot done, but maybe I shouldn't have been doing those things. Maybe they were things that we could have got an intern to do, or someone that, maybe a part-time contractor or even a volunteer. I was doing a lot of those types of things. And so by planning ahead, we were able to everyone knew I was going on a sabbatical. It wasn't a surprise. It wasn't like, I didn't get to the moment of burnout where I was like, I'm leaving. It really, our organization was a lot healthier when I got back. And that was May, right?
Oh yeah.
That September, we just
we took off. It was wild. I think, that's so important to be able to do that. And maybe you work yourself up. You work your way up as you think through that. I think one of the points that we preach all the time is when you're planning out your sermons, if you plan in advance and you use something like Ministry Pass's calendar, whatever calendar that you think works best for your congregation, whether it's one that you adapt, one you build out on your own, if you plan that in advance, you can say, here's where I need my guest speakers. I already know where they're preaching in our sermon series. Things obviously can change, but that gives you time off. And so you might say, well, we're going to start out in every 2 months, I'll have a guest speaker, or I'll have someone from the church, a youth pastor or associate pastor, preach. And that will build in those periods of rest and allow that week that you don't preach to be a little more restful, and then also for you to kind of catch up on things that maybe you haven't done before. And then here's something I would encourage every pastor to do. And we haven't talked about this, but I think what would be great is one Sunday when you have a guest speaker, just call your staff on a Saturday and say, hey, I'm actually not going to be at church this Sunday. And take a break and go to a different church. And just allow yourself to be in a congregation and to just worship for that one Sunday. I think it's helpful too because it gets you a chance to see how other churches are doing things. But maybe build that out. Maybe that's kind of one of the first few steps, and then from there you can work on getting a Sabbath or a sabbatical together, whether that's in 2021 or the beginning of maybe 2022.
Yeah, I know this is not a popular statement, Pastor, but if you're preaching more than 40 times a year, I think it's way too much. You can have other guest speakers. You can have people on your staff, your elders, deacons. They can help you. And that's not to say that you aren't the majority communicator. Of course you are. You're the pastor and the leader. But really leverage a calendar. Plan out your entire year. Plan out your rest periods, like Wade was mentioning, and it's going to really help you be sharper, so that when you do preach through a series, maybe you preach through Ephesians and you're the lone speaker for that series, it is just really sharp, really crisp. You've had some rest. You've allowed that content to marinate in your heart, and you're just bringing God's word to the people in a way that is more colorful than they've heard you communicate in a long time. And you're only going to be able to do that if you are intentional, right? Embracing only the things that add to the mission of significance. And I don't think being burned out and preaching 52 times a year is really adding to the mission of significance for you. It definitely makes you feel like you're doing a lot, but I don't know if it's really helping you improve and really helping your staff and your team, your leadership team, improve as communicators and in their responsibility with leadership as well. So, and I say that because I know it's not popular for me to say that. We did a survey one time. It's like, where do you need help with? What does your church need the most help with?
Yeah.
And literally, it was like 37 things. Dead last on the list was preaching. Pastor's like, no, we got it.
I'm great. I'm
cool.
A fantastic communicator.
I'm a master communicator, and we don't need anybody else.
Well, and I think, too, whenever you do that, you allow people who are passionate about certain topics to talk about those topics, which is helpful. And then you also communicate to your church, hey, I'm not the only person who can interpret scripture for you. Like, it's not just about me. There are all these other individuals that can do that as well. And you're still the primary communicator, but you build up the team around you and you communicate something bigger to your congregation. So I think that's important. We'd love to hear from you. Have you taken a sabbatical? How did that work?
Yeah.
How has including more guest speakers in your sermon calendar helped you and prepared you to rest this last year? Let us know. You can do that actually if you're watching on YouTube. You can put it in the comments. And then we also have the hashtag HelloChurchPod. So HelloChurchPod. You can tweet us and just say, hey, this is how I've rested, or I've learned to rest, or maybe say, this is what I'm going to do this next year. And I think that's going to be helpful for us to hear from you and also other people to hear from you too.
I will say, a lot of people, when I talk about my sabbatical story, I've taken 2 now. People have asked, like, what's the right amount of time to take off? I think, only you can really answer that, but I can tell you the first time around, I did 4 weeks. And after I did 4 weeks, I did one that was 6 weeks the next time. And I did feel that 4 weeks was a great starter. And it's maybe it's like the easiest way in, right? It's like an acceptable amount for you and for your team and, everything. But I did feel 4 weeks was a little too short. 6 weeks was kind of the sweet spot, so to speak. I think 8 weeks would just feel like an eternity, feel like a long time. And the reason why I say 4 weeks is a little too short is just by the time, like I didn't really feel like I was truly rested. Like like where you got to the point where
Yeah.
I didn't want to go back yet. It was about 3.5 weeks, right? When I finally was like relaxed and was like, man, I'm
Okay.
You know what I
I
mean?
can let it go. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I totally understand.
It was real hard to sort of come down for the first few weeks, and then when I finally did, it was like, well, you got to get back in the saddle. Don't get me wrong, it was wonderful. I was so glad I did it. In fact, we offer this to our team now. I'm a big believer in it. If you've been with us for 5 years, once you're with us for 5 years, we give you a paid sabbatical, month off. And we think it's healthy and it's beneficial. So if you have any questions about sabbaticals, I've had people DM me and ask me some tips or, what did you guys do? How do you structure that? Happy to chat with you. You can reach out at Justin Trapp on Twitter and or just put it in the comments on the YouTube and we'll get to them as well.
Yeah, and I've had people say, well, why should a pastor take a sabbatical? Because, I don't take a sabbatical. There's just something different about being a pastor. There's a spiritual weight. Like, at my job at Ministry Pass, I don't get calls, in the middle of the night and I have to go to the hospital to watch someone die. I don't have to do funerals unless at my local church they need somebody as backup. So there's a whole lot more stress involved with being a local church pastor you don't think about. And I think it's good to have a sabbatical.
Well, pastors, you don't have an off switch.
Yeah.
Right. Every room you walk into, people are looking to you. Every room,
That's true.
whether it's volunteers, whether it's your staff, a service, a worship service. When you walk into the room, people are looking to you. Right. And when you go home, your children are looking to you, and then after the kids go to bed, your wife, your spouse, they're looking to you for emotional support. Affirmation, spiritual leadership, you do not have an off switch as a pastor, and that's why it's important for you to be intentional about your rest weekly, like having weekly rest, having weekly moments of reflection. You gain so much clarity if you just go take an hour-long walk and without your phone. You just gain so much clarity, and God can plant things on your heart. You may be wanting to, go in one direction, and you take a long walk, and you realize, man, that's a terrible idea, and you hadn't really realized that unless you've gotten deep into thought. We have an action bias, right, in our society and as leaders, and I don't think we appreciate long walks of thoughtfulness, just being deep in thought, and so. Be intentional about your weekly rest periods, but also plan something big this year. Plan a prolonged period of rest for yourself. I'm telling you, you are going to benefit, but your organization may benefit even more, your team. And, that's a win-win for everybody.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Next time on Hello Church, we're going to talk about why you should probably preach through the Bible in 2021, this next year. So hang in tight. That's going to be a fantastic episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get this show, whether that's on iTunes or Spotify or YouTube. And let us know your thoughts using the hashtag HelloChurchPod. We'll see you next time on Hello Church.